I came to the band, this pipe section was not of standards, shall we say, and Mike would agree with that. And they probably never won piping at any event. And it was this world-class drum section that won the 52 Worlds with the shots that carried this band through and actually got us promoted up to grade 1. And that was a real important thing. And that was the drum section under John Kirkwood.
And so,
Under John Kirkwood.
I
John
can
Senior.
remember,
John
John
Senior.
Senior,
Yeah.
okay.
I can remember them practicing 4 or 5 nights a week through the whole summer.
At the
They're all
shop.
local. They're all local.
Yeah.
They all live within 15 minutes of the store. And they all showed up at 7 o'clock every night. They practiced till 9, 9:30, every single night of the week.
And-
I can remember going on at Embro one day, and the announcer, you know, from the stage was saying, "Look at those drummers."
So did you look back?
Yeah.
Yeah. So at that time, so there was quite a few advances that were made through the years. But it started with John, and then Graham can speak to this. It was Graham's dad, Jim, that became the lead drummer in '72, and took us through those good years up
Right.
until 1975.
Yeah, he left, yeah. But that's, the year '72 is when my uncle passed away.
Yep.
And he played up till the end of '74. And then John Jr. took over, I think, after that.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah. And,
And then Johnny left for
Muirheads.
Muirheads,
yeah.
along with Scott McCauley.
Okay.
He went to play with Rab Turner, and Scott went over at the same time, and both of them did come back to play probably 1980, 81.
And that was when Bob Downs.
Bob
had
Downs
the drum
filled
for
the,
him. Is that right?
yep, very
Okay.
credibly, and kept us going through the late 70s.
Okay.
Now, going back to John, we should talk about the shop a bit. I don't think we have.
Oh, no.
I mean, that was such a magic to have that there. I mean, John was an importer. And how many sets of pipes did he get for us? I remember when I got mine,
Yeah.
man, he took my old Robertsons, and I ended up with a brand new set of Silver and Ivory Hendersons for $330
That's
or
right.
something like this.
Wow.
John
In
Kirkwood had
'69,
a,
and he did the same for, there was about 5 or 6 sets came out.
All
of
of
that.
it. Close to a dozen, close to a dozen
Yeah,
sets.
yeah.
Well, you worked there.
So he
didn't
was
you?
always doing
Yeah,
this
that's
sort of
right.
thing.
See, John Kirkwood had this shop, and it was also, it was right close to the Navy Cadet Hall where we practiced, just down the street from. And importing these pipes, it was virtually a standing order in the tail end of the Henderson shop at that time. And John was bringing these pipes in for virtually everyone in the band. So we were outfitted in silver and ivory pipes.
They're about 350, if I
Pardon me?
remember right. 350, I remember right, around
Yeah,
that, 350,
and,
350.
uh,
That's
and
probably-
very, very cheap, and at that time. And also, John was an employer for many of the fellows that needed work. Pete worked for him. I got my first job.
Mike ripped his thumb off.
Mike, we all had injuries from the circular saw.
McNeil had blood equity in the
Alec Price worked for him for a number of years, so John was that type of person, total supporter of the band, both in the band itself and in the employment sense afterwards, you know.
So what about building the band up? I mean, it was mostly guys, you weren't bringing in guys from Scotland. There were some Scots in the band, you know. But it was all, where did the teaching come from primarily in both drumming and piping?
Well, circumstances are different back then, and we relied on a core band that was together in the late 50s, and they aged out, shall we say, and then a few of us came in, Mike and myself. Bob came in after school. Gary came in. You were still in high school, perhaps, Gary?
I was just entering high school.
Just
I was
entering
14
high
years
school.
old when I first came to the band.
Right. Pete came down from up north and just finished school there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that,
Okay.
and so this was an influx of younger talent that certainly replaced the older aging out talent. And that group was amended or added to during the 70s. Pete came in. What year did you come in, Pete?
76.
76.
From
I think
Buffalo.
by the
From
time,
Buffalo,
yeah.
I think by about that time, everybody in the pipe section, with 1 or 2 exceptions, is all under 30 years old.
Oh, very young band when I first
Yeah.
started, like,
Yeah.
after the initial band.
Except
But,
for you.
But a very young band. I was 17.
Again.
Yeah. And so, and it's that group of players you're looking at the remnants of it right now, because that group of players stayed together virtually right through to the late 80s.
Okay, so what about, you guys were up and coming rapidly. You were established in the 60s, but then you resurrected in the 70s. How do you think you were seen by the rest of the Ontario circuit? How did they view, what was the outside perception of Clan
Well, the
MacFarlane?
circuit was certainly different back then. There was a very strong competitive environment, but once everybody got off the field in mass bands, it was
Yeah.
completely different.
You know, St. Thomas had a great pipe section, but just couldn't keep a drum section that
We-
was competitive.
Yeah, and we would go and hang out at Gordy Tuck's trailer after the games and party and sing away and.
Everybody got along.
Yeah, so, the way you regarded a band that was in the top was perhaps a little bit different than it would be today in
Mhm.
certain environments. I think we were certainly regarded, because we were young, as being cocky. And I think we were. I think we were, at times, we thought we were the cats.
Without dignity, as one pipe major said.
Yeah.
Excuse me? If you're gonna say it right, it's
So-
diggity. You don't need diggity when you win, buddy.
So was it, some people I think who are around might have thought of Clan MacFarlane as kind of a closed shop.
Yep.
A little bit of a club, hard to get into. Did you
That's
open the
not
doors
true.
to other people?
It wasn't.
I will,
Yeah.
I will swear on that one. That's not true. I came down when I was 18. As a matter of fact, it was the day after Peter Mackenzie married Kathy. And these guys were hanging like crazy. And I said to Ken, I want to come and play with your band. And he just kind of laughed at me and said, well then, get your pipes going. Here's a bunch of music. Practice Sundays.
Is that true?
It's true. He also said, I need a place to stay.
No. He said that a number of times.
And the job.
I think a lot of people said that.
Well, I think it's true that we didn't solicit.
No.
On the other hand, I don't remember you
Solicitation's
turning
legal
anybody
now,
away.
McCrimmon.
No.
And very few
Well,
people were fired.
That's not
Yeah.
quite correct, Bob, but you're correct on, we never solicited a player, to my knowledge. And
You mean as come and join us?
Steel.
that's right.
That was
That's right.
currently playing.
And
Yeah.
that was something that was unwritten in the band. We were self-sufficient. We did have people that applied to, and I can think of one specific case. We had 3 people that wanted to come and play in the band, but if they had left the band that they were coming from, it would have destroyed that band. And so we turned them down and said, listen, a couple of years from now, seeing how it might go in your current band, we're still open, but you're not now. So I think we tended to exist that way. Bill played up, it was in Milton with,
Oakville.
Yeah,
Oakville?
Oakville with
Oakville
Lindsay.
happened. Yeah.
Lindsay and I
That's
played
right.
together.
And
And,
we
uh,
cooed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so when we were approached, we certainly were open that way. Okay?
Right.
I think that was the case, though, at that time. If you go back to that era, bands didn't solicit players at that
Right.
time, to any degree that I know of. And there was a lot of camaraderie between the bands, but you didn't go after their players. And I think that that has changed today, of course.
Well, part of it was geographical too.
Well, that's true.
Mhm.
You know, like if you
That's
grew
true.
up around Toronto, you played with the Cabernet. If you're in
Right.
Peninsula, you played with the Clan. If you're out London way or Windsor way, you played with Tuck, you know?
That's
Right.
And people were known by the bands that they came from or played with, and the stability in the bands was to be noted at that time. Far different, and we didn't have guest players to speak of, you know.
All the
Right.
bands back when I first came down all seemed to have good strength in numbers. Like, they all had big pipe sections and decent drum corps. It was like anybody's game on any day.
Oh, yeah, you could
No.
play great in grade 1 and get 4th.
Yeah.
There was no shame in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, very
Just
competitive.
great
It
playing
was.
in that day. Relative to the existence of what's happening today,
Mm-hmm.
but in that day, St. Thomas could go up and blow the park in half, and you just love to hear them play that way.
Yeah.
And
Chris with the
Same
Cabernet
with
there,
the Cabernet, go out there
they,
and stuff.
they just, it was their day and bang,
Yeah.
it's like, holy jumpers, how do you
It
beat
must be
that?
noted too that Guelph was coming on at this
Yes,
time on
it
grade
is.
9, and they're starting a little different repertoire than.
More creative.
That's right. We're a little more traditional, and they were coming on with a good sound and.
That's
a little
because you
more
went to
creative.
the old Sinklers.
Yeah, I heard one day they had a great sound, and we'll get to that.
And then you Maxwell.
Yeah, yeah, and you never knew what you're gonna get
They
from
never
Worcester.
forget that.
So the Buffalo connection, Peter,
Cheap beer and chicken wings, next.
The original US connection was the Cleveland folks. There
Yeah.
was four,
That-
I think.
yeah,
that'd be
Cleveland.
Noel.
Noel
Yeah.
and Doug Ross. And
Finnegan?
Dick
And-
Finnegan.
Don Ross.
Don Ross, Doug's father.
And they came in the sixties, I believe.
They
63?
definitely did.
63?
They came before the 66 trip.
Yeah.
It's probably about 65. And that was really important that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
That
So I
made
think
that.
you had that
Yeah.
US connection, you know, originally, and then Jack Gillis came up sort of on his own.
Mhm.
And Angus MacLeod and myself ran into Ken and Bob and Jack at a function in Buffalo. And I didn't know who these guys were, and they actually really invited Angus to the band, not me. But I happened to be sitting there, so I came along for the ride. And over time, we brought in some boys from Texas who moved to Buffalo, you know, specifically to play with the band.
A couple more from Cleveland.
Couple from Cleveland.
Stan Lyman, Bob
yeah,
Sloan.
Some of the younger
Okay.
kids from Cleveland came in.
Pete
and,
Lowry.
And they,
Yeah,
yeah,
Petey.
Peter Lowry.
Yep.
And we
Well,
had
and Alec Gray.
always seemed to have a US influx
Yeah.
until the bitter end, when I was the only one left. And, you know, with that pipe section bolstered with, say, anywhere between 4 and 6 or 7 pipers.
Half the pipe section was from the US at one time.
Yeah.
You know, it was a big crutch for the band, and it sort of ties to what Gillette said about the regionality of bands back then, where, you know, people didn't travel like they do now.
So geography was important then, Pete.
Yeah.
And we, living on the
Very.
border more or less, our access to players wasn't so much in the Ontario area as it was perhaps in the northern US states. But at that particular time, there was no band of standard in the north
No.
of the US, so
Hmm.
obviously we were the only game in town. And
It actually worked in another area to a great favor for us. After a Saturday contest, whether it be Brantford or Burlington or whatever the area, we'd have a Sunday practice the next day because the Cleveland guys were all staying over. So where everybody else went home to hearth and family, we blew pipes on the Sunday for 2 or 3 hours.
Mhm.
How
Cleaned up the
long?
crap from the day. Well, for those of us that had them going, Bob. And then you got, but what that
Never
did is
stops, does it?
bad reads, bad problems, get them fixed, then you had a midweek practice that was nominal only because of the geography, the guys couldn't make it.
Right.
So you got to Saturday practice, a lot of bands had no practices. We had 2 or 1.5, so that really gave us a bit of a push through the summer months. It kept getting stronger as the summer
Yeah.
went through.
And we did that right up till the end, where we would play every Sunday.
Yeah.
And people would be I'd leave games parks at 10 a.m. to get to practice for noon. And, you know, the guys you've been drinking with, where the hell are you going?
Band practice.
I'm on the back, what do you mean you're going? That's how we went.
Yeah.
But getting back to membership, I think we must have been one of the first ones to face the issue of females. You may have to edit this out, I don't know.
No, it's
We
true.
had ladies that
Yeah.
wanted to play with us, and I guess we somehow found a way to politely not invite, or, I don't know, it was like, you know.
Yeah, Clan MacFarlane wouldn't have been alone at that time if, you know, all males sort of policy.
I put in the comment before, though, that the Clan was a closed shop, and I agree with the lads that it wasn't a closed shop. And anybody that wanted to.
Well, we let you in twice,
to go to
McNeil.
the shop, that's true.
It was very much a family band too. The families grew up together.
They all lived near each other, eh?
Yeah. I always went over to Kenny's folks' place after practice on a Sunday for Sunday dinner.
Right.
And at various times, it would be half the band would be in. Yeah, it was, and it might have looked to the outsiders, the band went on vacation together, things like that. This is a tight group, tough to break into.